Friends, we are very happy to inform you that e-modules are prepared for B.Ed program at Telangana by the School of Education, Osmania University under Pandit Madan Mohan Malaviya National Mission on Teachers and Teaching Scheme MHRD New Delhi. It's indeed our pleasure to share with the teacher educators and the prospective teachers and get maximum benefit out of it. It's a first of its attempt by us. We continue to add many more such lessons to share with you all.
Good morning everybody. This is Nisi, working as an assistant professor in Ghulam Ahmad College of Education from past 19 plus years. The topic for today is motivation in learning with reference to Maslow. What do we mean by motivation? We say motivation is a natural human tendency to seek out and conquer challenges as we pursue our interests and capabilities. We have heard of many motivational speakers, right? What is that happens to us when we listen to such people? We say motivation basically energizes our behavior, or we move energetically towards pursuing a goal, or we say we put in lot of hard work so that we achieve our goal. And the reason for this particular energized behavior could be a need, could be a drive, could be your curiosity, could be a social pressure, could be your beliefs, values, it could be anything which helps you achieve your goal. So basically, when we talk of motivation, we say it is a process of arousal, that is awakening some kind of instinct within you and basically directing you towards a goal. So having a goal in front of you is very important in motivation, where we say motivation is a goal directed behavior. Now goal directed behavior, when you say, it arouses interest in you and you are energized to work towards that goal, but until you reach that goal, that your energy should be maintained. So basically motivation is arousal, direction towards the goal and maintaining that behavior throughout until you have reached that goal. Okay. So motivation, we say, is a force within an individual, that is, which lies inside you, that drives you to behave in a certain way. It is basically a process of channelizing your inner drives so that you accomplish your goals. There are basically two types of motivation, which we call it as intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. What do you mean by intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivation, we say, is something which lies within your own self. That is, when somebody is intrinsically motivated, we say the behaviors are as a result of your interest and satisfaction related to the task you are performing. Example, we say when you are intrinsically motivated, we need not do the things for the sake of getting some incentives, because the activity or the task which you do itself is very satisfying and fulfilling. So you don't expect any incentive for doing that particular activity. Okay. Intrinsic motivation basically involves the inspiration, energy and activation that propels an individual to make change in behavior for the purpose of attaining internal satisfaction or fulfillment. For example, let us take you have a hobby of painting. You do painting because by doing that particular activity of painting, you feel so fulfilled, so satisfied, so happy. That means doing that particular activity itself is a source of pleasure to you. You are not expecting any gains out of it. That is, whether I will sell that, I will get money, nothing like that. When you do that particular activity, it itself is very satisfying. You feel happy doing that activity. That is, you are intrinsically motivated. Something where you do that particular activity and you are gaining satisfaction out of it. And how is that you are going to nurture this in children? They say parents or children, for children parents are the first teachers. So we say parents can nurture this kind of intrinsic motivation basically by providing an environment which is engaging and an atmosphere which is caring at home. Also we say the expectations, we need to tell them what is being expected out of them, that is have a transparent environment at home, that is you express freely, give the freedom to the child also to express his or her views to the parents. So when there is transparency in that, we say the child is also internally motivated. Also you need to instill confidence in the child, that is whatever capabilities the child has or whatever abilities or potential the child has, you need to nurture it and bring out that things in the child. And for that we say parents also can be role models. It could be teachers also who can act as role models. Now here when you say role model, we say if the parent is or teacher is doing some particular activity, we say you enjoy doing that activity and the child sees you doing that, you are not doing it for getting some kind of reward. So what happens is when you are doing that particular activity and you enjoy doing it, the child also will be interested in doing a particular activity without any expectation. So while doing that, the child derives happiness. And we say when the students feel a sense of belonging and respect in classrooms also, you instill something called as intrinsic motivation. That is, you learn for the sake of gaining knowledge, not for getting marks or not for competing with others. You are reading or you are learning because gaining that knowledge gives me lot of satisfaction or happiness. I have learned something new. That feeling when you give it to the child and the child feels happy, we say the child is intrinsically motivated. In contrast, when we do something for obtaining some kind of reward, it could be a grade, it could be to avoid punishment you are doing something, or it could be you are for pleasing teachers you are doing some activity or any other reason, we say you are not finding happiness in doing that task, rather what you will gain out of it is your concern. If I do this particular activity, what will I get? When you do such kind of activity, we say you are extrinsically motivated individual. That is, extrinsic motivation, we define it as an activity which is involved and you are doing that particular activity to obtain an outcome which lies outside the individual. Okay. Now what is that, or how is that you could foster extrinsic motivation in children? There are many ways, like we say it could be rewarding the child with an allowance when they complete their chores. That is, the child does some particular task assigned to the child and you give a monetary benefit to the child becomes happy. So next time the child will do and the expectation is still there that I will get something. Okay. When that is there, we say the child is extrinsically motivated. Or we say if the child, you give an assignment to the child and the child completes it before the stipulated time, there is extra credit marks given to the child will be motivated to continue that behavior in the later tasks also. It could be if the child has won a particular competition, you get a trophy, you give a trophy to the child is motivated. So every time there is expectation in the child to get something. So the child, we say, is doing some activity in order to gain something. Like we say star student of the month. For the whole month you look at the child's performance, and if the child has done extremely good or if the child has topped in the class, you put a star student of the month on the notice board in the class, which makes the child very happy because my name is displayed on the board. So when that happens, the child will try to improve his performance later also because I want my name to be there every time. Or it could be for smaller children, we say you give smiley stickers on the assignments where they become very happy. It could be a golden sticker, silver sticker, all that is also given when the child is extrinsically motivated. Because we say extrinsic motivation is necessary especially for young children, because they do not understand the concept of intrinsic motivation when orally told. But when you experience or when you do it as role models, we say, and you express your views to the child will definitely understand. Okay. So, we say based on the needs of the child, we are motivated. Now, here is a psychologist who gave importance to this particular need, and he says people are motivated because they have a need. Now, how do you define a need? When we say a need, we say it is a state of deprivation, that is you lack it or you do not have it, that is why you want it. So, anything which I do not have, I will need it or want it. That is where Abraham Maslow comes into picture. So, he has proposed a theory called a hierarchy of needs, and he has emphasized the role of needs in the life of a human being for that person to get motivated. And what has he done? He has arranged that needs in different stages, okay, and that has come up in the form of a pyramid. He says the needs are categorized as different names, like starting from physiological need, above that you have safety needs, then love and belonging needs, self-esteem needs, and self-actualization needs. So, these are the category of needs which he arranged in a form of a pyramid. Now, here also the base of the pyramid, when he considers, he says this is the strongest need, or we say this physiological need is one which is the having more strength than all other needs. And what does it include? It includes your basic needs such as drinking when thirsty, eating when hungry, sleeping when you feel sleepy, all these basic human needs, he calls it as physiological needs or the most essential needs of a human being. And he says physiological needs are the one which is universally existing in all human beings, and until this is satisfied, you do not think of any other need, because the base of the pyramid he put it as physiological need. Until that is not satisfied, you do not move into the next need, which he says is the safety need. So, when physiological needs are met, then only you move to the next level of having a safe environment. And we say that as children also we have a need for a safe and predictable environment. If you do not get that, they start reacting in different ways, like some of them exhibit fear, some of them exhibit anxiety, some of them are doubtful, that you do not have a safe environment to live in. So, it is only after physiological needs that the safety needs come into picture. Then the third level he says is love and belonging needs. Now, love and belonging needs include both romantic relationships or also the relationship with family, with friends, and it basically includes our need to feel part of a social group. That is, I need people whom I can connect with. It could be family, it could be friend, it could be your partner, it could be anybody. Now, that all comes only after your physiological need and safety needs are met to some extent. The fourth level he says is our self-esteem needs. Now, self-esteem needs, here he categorizes it as having two components. Now, the two components are, first one he says is a feeling of self-confidence in an individual, and the second component is the feeling of valued by others. Okay. So, self-confidence and feeling good about oneself, and that goodness of oneself should be recognized by other people and you should be valued. That is, you need social recognition also there. That is, you as a member of the society should be accepted in the society and people should recognize you and you should be feeling good. That is what he means by self-esteem needs. So, this is the fourth level in the hierarchy. And the last level he tells about is self actualization needs, which refers to the feeling of fulfillment or living up to the potential. That is, whatever is our potentialities, we are exploiting it to the maximum. That is what he meant by self actualization needs, and he has placed this particular need on the top of the pyramid. Now, on the top of the pyramid, when he has placed, he says it is basically, when you example, if you take, it is basically, if a person is very good at teaching, if the person is very good at raising children, if the person is very good at drawing or writing poetry or novel, and you do not have time to do all this and you get stuck at one particular point, they say you are not attaining any self actualization. If you feel that all these things which you had within you, you are able to exercise it to the full extent possible, then you have a feeling of self actualization, he says. So, here when he has placed it in the form of a pyramid, we say it follows this, and the strength of the need decreases as we go from one level to the next level. Now, strength decreases in the sense, he says the first 4 levels, he has again categorized it into 2 parts. Like he says, the first 4 levels, which is self esteem, love and belonging needs, safety needs and physiological needs, he has called it as deficiency needs. Why deficiency? Because they motivate people to act only when they are unmet to some degree, else it does not happen. So, that is called deficiency needs, and only the topmost part, which is the self actualization part, he calls it as growth needs, because people constantly strive to satisfy it, and it is actually the need for fulfillment, the need to develop all of one's potential, talents and capabilities. Like we just now mentioned, if you have certain capabilities and you are able to exercise all those capabilities and accomplish the goals to at least some minimal degree, we say you have attained self actualization. Since it is at the top of the hierarchy, it addresses the potential of the whole person. So, it could be categorized as a growth need. So, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which he has placed in the form of a pyramid. But then there are certain implications of this theory also. Like we say, as teachers, when we go to class also, you have to see that the lower level needs of the students are met. That is, the physiological need where the child is physically comfortable, the child is not thirsty, not hungry, and the child feels safe, relaxed in an environment. The child has a sense of belonging in the classroom. So, when all these things are there, this child is ready to function at a higher level, and we said learning comes at a higher order of thinking. And teachers basically should make learning appear very appealing, that is, by not giving any pressure to the child, minimizing this pressure and also reducing the possibility of failure. That is, the fear in the child should be removed. When the child is fearful or the child is very anxious and all, the learning does not happen. So, as teachers we say we should be able to minimize or reduce the possibility of failure and also embarrassment in the child. Now, embarrassment basically comes when the child is ridiculed by people, laughed at by classmates. So, teacher has to give awareness to the classmates regarding all these things. And coming to certain exceptions to the hierarchy. We say Maslow has given the theory of need hierarchy, but then there are certain exceptions for it, and one of the exceptions he says is some people self-esteem is more important than love and belonging needs, because according to Maslow he says you cannot skip any particular stage, that is physiological need followed by safety needs, love and belonging, self-esteem, then only self-actualization. So you cannot jump from one particular stage, skip safety needs and go to love and belonging needs. Each is a hierarchy, that means you have to follow step by step. So when you come to exception, he says, or they say, for some people self-esteem becomes more important than love and belonging needs. So his theory doesn't satisfy there. The second exception says that people who are naturally very creative, for them creativity is everything, they don't value anything more than creativity. So creativity being very important, they will desire to be creative even if the lower needs are not met. Third exception they says is for people who have lived with worry whole life about how to fulfill the basic needs. So if you are going to be worried about how to fulfill the basic needs, that is the lower level, the physiological needs, then you will not think of any higher need because you are stuck at that particular stage where you will be more bothered about how to earn your livelihood. And the fourth exception Maslow says is that people who are not given enough love, that person or such people could lose the desire for love altogether and think that it is not important anymore. So they might not come up in the hierarchy step by step. So all these exceptions do exist in the theory of Maslow's hierarchy. Apart from this, they say there are certain criticisms also faced by hierarchy of needs given by Maslow, like the very concept of self-actualization, which is placed at the top of the pyramid. That concept also has been changed, it has been defended, reformulated, all that, especially because it lacks precision in the definition of self-actualization. He only says it is exploiting or exploring the full potential of an individual. Now how to define it? And also they say there are no research studies which were done to prove that this is right. So lack of research or lack of supporting research also claim that numerous individuals do not conform to the model given by Maslow. So because they don't conform to the model, they could bypass one or more levels of the hierarchy and go to the next level. Like we say, if love is not important, they could go to self-esteem. If they feel safety is not important, they could again go to self-esteem also. So physiological safety, love, belonging, esteem and self-actualization need not be followed in that hierarchical order given by Maslow. That is one criticism, because in actual life they are not seen, or there is no research evidence to support this statement, because there are lots of exceptions seen there. So in conclusion, we can say that Maslow's hierarchy of needs has profound implications in educational setting, because unless and until students' most basic needs are met, they are simply unable to attend higher order tasks such as learning. Here is what the teacher plays an important role, we say. The teacher has to see that the child is in an environment which is caring, and the child has to be in an environment which supports the feelings of the child, like you respect the opinion of the child, you give ample freedom to the child to express his views, because if the child is in doubt, basically further learning doesn't happen. When the child is in doubt, until you clear that particular doubt, you cannot move on to the next session. So what happens is, if the teacher is an authoritative teacher who doesn't basically give freedom to the child to ask doubts or express the views freely, the child doesn't learn further. So as teachers, we say it is very important for us to provide a conducive or favorable environment in the classroom where the child is free to express the things, the child is free to ask questions, and the child's opinion has to be taken into consideration, and the child needs to be respected in the class. Every individual for that matter needs to be respected in the classroom. So, when all this happens, and all this will happen when the basic needs are fulfilled. Like you cannot expect a child who is very hungry to sit and listen to your lecture, right? So, they say physiological needs has to be fulfilled. Now, when he says it has to be fulfilled, it need not be met 100%. At least to some minimal degree it has to be met, so that the child moves on to the next level also. So, this is how learning takes place. Thank you.